right, perfect. All right, welcome to All on Board, techniques to develop an effective orientation program. As Sandy said, I'm Leslie LaForty. I've been the logistics manager for District 84 since 2021, proud member of World Toasters since 2018, and almost a 30-year cast member. But I'm also a Disney Vacation Club training and development facilitator. So I do this thing every day, but that's a little bit about me. I like to start off these presentations with my 3 Ps, my purpose, my process, and my payoff. So the purpose of this presentation today is to give you concepts for a successful onboarding program. So how the process today is we're going to talk about conscious competence. We're going to talk about form and aloha. You're probably thinking, what on earth are you talking about, Leslie? That's okay. I'm here to explain it to you. All right. And the payoff is that hopefully with these tips and tricks, you will be able to create or develop an onboarding program that will work for your clubs. Okay, so what exactly is onboarding? Onboarding, according to Merriam-Webster, says it's the act or process of orienting and training a new employee. I thought about it, and Toastmasters is an organization. So let's change that. It's the act and process of orienting and training a new Toastmaster. Okay? So why does it matter? Tell me, why do you think it matters?
Want them to
For retention.
For retention, okay, yeah.
So they know what to do next.
Exactly, so what they know what to do next, what else? Karen, you said something?
Well, they want to come back. I mean, you want them to get to be a
Right.
Toastmaster.
Exactly, you want them to come back.
Consistent training and consistent information.
Yes, consistency, yes. Should it matter though?
Absolutely.
You think it matters? Yeah, it should matter, right? All right, yes. So that's why I'm passionate about this. I'm very passionate about this onboarding program. Because if you're still not sure if onboarding is something that should be done, look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. According to Bamboo HR, 89% of employees that had a successful onboarding program have stayed 5 years into their careers at the company. And 82% maintain retention at work, according to the Brandon Hall Group, through Glassdoor. Bottom line, it is all about trust. Onboarding develops trust in the system, in the members, in the organization, in the clubs. But it can also go beyond that, because if they have trust in the clubs, it means they can have trust in the area, in the division, all the way up to the district. It's all about higher retention rates, keeping them there, even after they have fulfilled their goals for Toastmasters. They will stay to help others and pay it forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So where do we start? Well, let's talk about conscious competence. Has anybody ever heard of that before? Show of hands. Has anybody heard of the conscious competence model? Okay. It was actually a concept that was developed back in the 60s. And Noel Birch applied it to learning in the 70s. Some people might know it as the 4 steps of learning. Okay, so let me give you an example, a Toastmaster example. Potential member walks into the club. They are an unconscious competent. They don't know what they don't know. Okay. So over time, they become a member. They've done a couple of paths. They become a conscious incompetent. It means that they're doing the paths, they're gaining confidence, but they're still not exactly sure what they need to know. Keep going, they start they start volunteering for area and division leadership roles. They become a conscious competent. I mean, they're getting better. They're learning more about the organization. And then finally, when they get all of their paths done, they get that HPL, they get their distinguished Toastmaster designation, they become that DTM, then they become an unconscious competent. They are where they need to be. They are skilled to be able to help others. Does that make sense? Perfect. So let's talk about how the unconscious competence and the form method relate. So the form method and the Aloha method are just acronyms that we use here at Disney, or at least with Disney Vacation Club where I work, but I've changed it to modify it to adapt to Toastmasters. So the form method that I have is F, formulate a plan, O, occupy the space, R, retain the audience, and M, modify if needed. We're going to go over each letter. So the first thing is F, formulate a plan. What does that mean? Any ideas? Any thoughts?
Well, know where you're going.
Know where you're going? Yes. Have a purpose. Have a purpose. Exactly. So find out what the new Toastmaster wants. What are their priorities? So based on their priorities, what kind of actions can you take to get them there? Now, some will impose timelines, some will not. Of course, we all know that Toastmasters is self-paced. So putting a timeline in place may or may not be beneficial. It really depends on what the goals of that new member is. Okay, but you just want to start with a plan for that individual. The great thing about it is that it can be individualized as well. It doesn't have to be a one size fits all. Okay, so that's F, formulate a plan. Occupy the space. How many times have you been to a meeting? You've got 15 members in your club, but only 5 show up. And the 5 that do show up, one's on the phone, one's daydreaming, one's talking to another Toastmaster while a speech is going on. Occupying space lets new members know that it is a safe space, both mentally, physically, and emotionally. So you want to make sure that if you are in a meeting, whether it be virtual, hybrid, or in person, you want to be fully present, because that gives a new Toastmaster the comfort to say, okay, I can come back. This is a comfortable space. I can fail forward here. Okay. All right, please stop me if you have any questions. I really do want this to be a discussion as well. So if you have any questions, please shout them out. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is retain the audience. How many of you have had potential guests come into your space and then you never see them again? Show of hands. How many? Yep. Yep. I've had it done. Had it done. You get them all excited about it, and they ghost. So retaining the audience, again, making that safe space for not only your current members, but for your new and future members. Because if you retain the audience, you develop dedicated members who also become loyal fans. It's all about transparency too. As we came in today, I was having technical difficulties. I wasn't afraid to say it. I apologize, folks. Be transparent, because transparency gives them the opportunity to be comfortable. Okay, so you want to retain your audience in whatever way possible. If it means being social, if it means pulling somebody aside and asking them, hey, how you doing? I see that you might be struggling a little bit. Get into that personalize. Be friendly, be open, be approachable. Retain that audience. And of course, M stands for modify if needed. What's working? What's not working? Get the feedback, not just from the current members, but from your guests and also your potential members or your brand new members. Find out what worked for them, what wasn't so great. I think we call that the moments of truth, don't we? But it doesn't have to be a formal thing. Moments of truth doesn't have to be the formal 2 times a year we have to do it situation. Modifying if needed should be a constant and consistent process. You want to be able to make sure that you know what's going on with your clubs. And it doesn't just have to be the officers. Every member is responsible for giving feedback, for saying what's not working, for praising the things that are working. You want to be able to do that. Okay? So that is the form method in a nutshell. All right, now let's talk about Aloha. Anticipate, listen, observe, help, and appreciate. All right, anticipate the needs and the wants of not just your new members, but your current members. We are not mind readers. Unless you say something, we're not going to know how to help. All right, so needs and wants. What does your potential member want to get out of their journey? How can we help them? What do they want to do? Do they want to join contest? Do they want to get their DTM? Do they just want to be able to stand up here and talk? Find out, personalize it, make sure it's right for them. Listen. When they occupy the space, when they show up to meetings, are they paying attention? Are they getting involved? Are they just sitting in the corner, not doing anything and just observing the whole time? Look for those verbal and nonverbal cues, because as a new Toastmaster, you don't know what to ask. You don't know what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So always pay attention and listen to those verbal and nonverbal cues. Because as people, we can be pretty transparent with our body language. We know some people are very intuitive in that sense. So find out and pay attention to your members. Observe. Are they showing up? Are they engaging? And it goes with listening. Listening and observing go hand in hand. You want to make sure you're paying attention. That is the bottom line. Be attentive. Okay? And if they're not showing up, reach out. Find out. Hey, we haven't seen you in a while. Is everything okay? Do you need help with anything? Because some people aren't going to tell you that they're embarrassed or that they were a little overwhelmed during that first meeting. They're not going to talk to you about that in a group setting. So sometimes one-on-one might be the best case in that situation. So you want to be observant enough to see if there's something else going on. Any questions so far? Any thoughts? Okay, moving on. Help. Everybody needs help, whether they know it or not. They want to be guided. They want to be encouraged. Help is what we do when they ask questions and sometimes when they don't ask questions. Again, going back to that nonverbal, if they look confused, chances are they're going to need help. But help can also mean not just individually, but as a whole. Help can also mean going outside of the club, helping the area, helping the division, helping the district, building excitement for events, building that community. That's all part of helping them. Also, community service falls into this category. Being able to help your community to build retention, to encourage membership growth. If you're doing stuff outside in the community, then of course it will encourage them to keep going, to make a statement, to network, to reach out. Even if they don't need help, but they can help others. Acts of service. I know, Oscar, you're really into that, acts of service, so. All right, and of course, the last A is appreciate. Every meeting should close with a thank you for being here. Even if you've got 2 members at your meeting, thank them, show gratitude, appreciate your members. You could have 2 members at your meeting, you could have 20 members at your meeting, but showing them the gratitude for them actually showing up is huge. It means that you care. And when people feel that you care, they will be more open to helping, to appreciating, and to being there for your club. Okay, so I do have a little activity. We're going to do this as a group activity. So I've got the form and Aloha up on the screens. Let's come up with some ideas on how we can form. Let's start with F. What kind of a plan would you start with?
Have a welcoming committee.
Have a welcoming committee. That's a great idea. All right. Would you put a timeline on it?
No,
Not necessarily? Okay. All right. So what else? What else can you do to formulate a plan? What kind of ideas would you have as you're creating your welcoming committee?
I do think you need a timeline. I think you need to be specific within the first or second meeting of the people coming to your meeting. You don't want to just have a welcoming committee and welcome them 2 months later. So I think you do have to have a timeline.
That is a great point, Vicki. Thank you. Yes, have a timeline. So when a new member comes in, maybe you want to make sure that they get together with the welcoming committee no more than 3 meetings in. Somebody has to greet them and help them get settled within the first 3 meetings that they attend. Okay, that's a great idea. All right, what else? What kind of actionable items could you do within those first 3 meetings?
Leslie, I have a question. May I ask it?
Absolutely, please do.
Well, I noticed that throughout your presentation, and we all tend to do this, you're talking about you need to do this, or we should do that, or you should do that. But I believe one of the things that's missing is that specific you. Who is responsible for what activities? Is it certain officers' roles? Is it the executive committee? Is it every member? Because I don't know about anybody else, but when I listen and they say, well, you need to do this, I always think they're talking to everybody else, maybe not me.
Right. Well, to be honest, that is up to the club. I leave it up to the clubs because it can be a welcoming committee, like Deb said, it can be officers. I want to make it open to the club. These are just suggestions for the club to think about these things. So if they choose to implement, that's great. If they don't, that's fine too. So my thought is it should or shouldn't, but might fall under the VPE. It could fall under membership. But honestly, it is a club decision. So whatever they decide to formulate, and that's part of formulating a plan, is that who is going to take responsibility for being the welcoming committee, for being the one who greets and welcomes potential and new members.
Leslie, Kathy Orr has her hand up.
Yes, go ahead, please. Yes, Kathy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vicki.
At the club, one of the things that we try to do is have a role mentor. So if a new member is taking a role, we try to make sure that somebody that knows the role is sitting next to them. We also, if we have a guest come into the club, we try to seat them near one of our members that's more acquainted with Toastmasters and our club culture.
Excellent. That's a fantastic idea. And that's what this really is about. I mean, I just want to present the ideas, but it's up to the clubs to take them or leave them, honestly. So great idea, Kathy. Thank you so much for that. All right, let's talk about occupying the space. What are ways that we can occupy the space, whether it be hybrid, in person, or online? Any thoughts on that?
Make sure you're all in, you're paying attention to everything that's being said, because after all, you want 100% of the attention when you're up front.
Absolutely. It's just a common courtesy. However, life happens. Oscar.
We've talked about a lot of times about having a powerfully structured meeting. You're talking about, that effectively using the timer for each role, having a solid agenda and sticking to it.
Right.
If people, they really value their time, and if you can keep to that and you keep it a professional environment, no matter what the meeting is, then there, like you said, it comes out to trust. They trust that what you said on the agenda is going to be delivered, right? And so just really sticking to that timeline.
That's a great idea. Yes, thank you. All right, what else? What else for occupy the space? Okay. All right, what about retaining the audience? What can we do to retain our audience, to keep them coming back?
Keep it fun.
Keep it fun. Thank you, Francine. Yes, but how do we do that? What kind of things can we do to keep it fun?
I say keep it fun while we're keeping it respectful, because having fun sometimes can be off-putting to other people. What you and I consider fun,
Right.
Leslie may not, or Vicky may not. So be aware that fun is different for everybody.
That is a very good point. Keep the inside jokes for the post-toasties. That's my advice, is that if you have a new guest or a potential member in your meeting, if you have inside jokes, and every club has inside jokes, every club culture is different. So, but if you have things that you wouldn't put into a meeting, just leave it for post-toasties. It's a great point. Thank you. All right, what else?
I think you need to have speeches very interesting. I think a lot of people are bored when they come into a meeting and they hear certain speeches and it doesn't relate into their lives. And I think sometimes we need to think about these things when we're starting to speak to our audience, to make it more interesting for them, to make it maybe worldwide or something that everybody really likes. Like food, I think always comes in really good, but there's other things, gardening or creating different ideas might be more interesting than some of the things that we just talked about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everybody has their different strokes for different folks. So something that might be appealing to you may not be appealing to someone else, which is perfectly fine because it is your speech. But retaining audience is key, yes. So being able to have that engagement is definitely something that you do want to think about, not just in speeches, but in the overall feel of the meeting.
Fun table topics,
Fun table topics.
because
Okay.
Yeah.
something where people will want to get up there, not some hard questions that freaks them out. You need like
Right.
something fun.
Sure. Absolutely,
Like
yes.
in the Disney clubs, we usually do
Disney trivia.
Disney trivia,
Right.
which
right.
relates to cast members.
Absolutely. Anybody else for retaining the audience? Any other comments?
Certainly the whole thing about follow-up. And, just being over all these different clubs, right?
Yes.
And today, Sandy and I had the experience of Max, who's a new member. And it was interesting because we did have a discussion with him. He is in charge of the association that runs, does parks and events and
Roller coasters.
roller coasters and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And so he came, but we had mentioned to him that you could come to us on Zoom
Mhm.
and we'll help you with your next project.
Right.
He did his first intro project, but today he had a new project that he needed, but this was directed towards his audience,
Right.
the association.
Mhm.
And so he had two proposals and we worked with him. Now, somebody like that who sees already that we're engaged in helping him in his career path and helping him with his project, he's gonna come back and we hooked him. But that was really finding out what he wanted, was a little bit of conversation during the meeting and then inviting him to participate outside the meeting and then actually being there for him. So that definitely hopefully will keep him on board.
Oh, good. That's a great idea. All right.
I'm here, Oscar. I'm on board.
Yay, welcome. All right, what else?
I think one of the things that's important to remember is that just because you don't like that topic or it's not interesting to you, they may be preparing something for their job, and all they are asking of us is not to critique what they're talking about.
Right.
And they're not asking us to critique it at all when any speech is given. They are asking us for feedback on the presentation method, not the presentation words.
Perfect, yes. And that would be a communication before the speech as to how would you like us to evaluate you? So that's one other thing to think about. It's a great way to retain the audience and to keep them coming back, because if they know that you're listening for what they need, they know that they can come back and get what they need out of the meetings. Okay? Yes, Sandy.
I had one person tell me they finished their path, so they have nothing else to do
Oh.
here.
Oh, dear.
And I said, well, there's a whole district out there
Mhm.
and a whole world out there.
Yes.
And thinking about it, new members don't know how big Toastmasters is, so constantly keeping them in touch with the district is another thing.
Area, division, district, yes. There is a world outside of your clubs. So we want to make sure that they are aware of that as well, to keep them going, because they may have achieved their personal goal, but that doesn't mean that they can help the club in other ways. Of course. All right, great discussion. Thank you. What else? Anything else for retain the audience? Yes,
Make your guests feel comfortable.
make your guests feel comfortable. Absolutely. And how can we do that?
Talking to them, saying hello, welcoming them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Coming from a guest, thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
You can also gauge the guest's understanding by engaging the guests during the meeting.
There you go. Yes, absolutely. Making sure that they're touching base with them. Are you okay? Just, is there any questions that I can answer for you? How are you doing? Simple questions that can keep them occupied and keep them engaged. All right, we don't really need to go into modify if needed. That is kind of self-explanatory. Or does anybody have any comments about that? Modifying if needed? I really shouldn't assume.
Well, I think sometimes you do. I mean,
Mhm.
all of a sudden, everybody doesn't show up at certain times at meetings.
Uh-huh.
So you're always modifying. I think the word modifying could mean anything to pertain to the meeting.
Absolutely.
Depending, I think we didn't have a scenario probably, but if we had one,
Mhm.
we could certainly modify it.
Absolutely. Yes, Amy.
Sometimes we have to modify to certain people's personality.
Okay.
I had one that was pushed into a role
Hmm.
that was too hard for them
Okay.
and ended up crying.
Oh, no.
So for her, it was more hand holding.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody else, they could have just stepped up and done it.
Mhm.
And it's nothing against her, but we need to figure out their personality before we nudge them.
And that's a great point. Modifying doesn't necessarily always mean the policies, procedures, and processes of the club itself. It could be individual. It could be tailoring to a member's needs.
And Leslie,
Yes, yes, ma'am.
in the chat, we have Dr. Maria Martinez wanting to point out the opportunities to serve outside the club, such as the League of Volunteers.
Absolutely. Yes, Dr. Maria, thank you for being here. Yes, absolutely. And that's great. Modifying and giving our members the opportunities to grow outside of the clubs. That is a great point. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, any other comments about form? Any other thoughts before we move on to Aloha? Okay, great. All right, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about Aloha. Anticipate. How can we anticipate the questions that are going to be asked by new members? Because we've all been there. We've all been new members at some point in our Toastmasters journey. I mean, that's how we got started, right? So go back and think about what kind of questions that you had when you first started. Any thoughts?
You know, how is this going to benefit me? What is it? You know, where are we going to be? Where do we meet? I mean, there's just a whole bunch of questions. A lot of that can be answered in the what stuff we push out there in the promotion.
Exactly.
Why does it say where leaders are made?
Because, yes, why does it say where leaders are made? As a matter of fact, before, as I was coming in here to prep, there was another class before us. And I introduced myself to the gentleman who was here. And he obviously he had never heard of Toastmasters because at the end of the conversation, he goes, "Have fun toasting." So it was a little funny anecdote, but it only goes to show that we are able to explain ourselves even before they start asking questions. Now, one way that you can anticipate needs is how many clubs that are here have a welcome packet. They can just hand to a member and say, here's what we're about. Here's everything that you need to know. When you're ready, come and join us.
I don't always think that's effective, Leslie, because how many times are we going to hand them these things and they're just going to say, "Oh, thank you," and walk away and throw them out when they leave?
Right, but if you go through it before they leave, wouldn't that help?
Absolutely, but a lot of clubs will just say, "Here you go. This is what we're all about."
Yep.
And be done.
That is very true, and that is entirely up to the club. That is at the club's discretion.
And you have two hands up in the
Okay.
chat. That's Leadership Toastmasters first.
Okay,
They may
Hey, Leslie, this is Mark.
go ahead, Marjane.
Hey, Leslie. Hey, yeah, we had one of our new almost member haven't got the paperwork through yet, but on anticipate, say, know your audience. And that's so true for not just your speeches, but know your audience as in what kind of guests are you attracting?
Exactly.
We also have Max Glorit, Leslie.
Okay, all right, Max, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I agree with Deborah. I feel like just handing someone a packet could very much almost be more of a turnoff and be more complicated than the follow-up of there should be a conversation about goals and why someone is interested in Toastmasters. And I'd say as someone who actively was seeking out the organization and explores the website, there's a lot of ways that I could use Toastmasters in my life, and there's a lot of different pathways, and it's nice to have all that information compiled in a packet. But if you just turn it over without any kind of direction on maybe where to focus or where a good starting point is and kind of outlining a beginning path for someone, it can be very overwhelming and almost more of a turnoff.
Absolutely, that is definitely an excellent point. So as I said, it is at the discretion of the clubs. It's just a suggestion. If it works for some clubs, sometimes it works for some clubs, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the culture and the dynamic of the club. It really does. So all of these suggestions are made to be tailored to the culture of each individual club. And again, it goes back to the modify if needed. If it works for a little while and then all of a sudden it doesn't work, that's when you pivot. So, but great points, both of you. Marjane, thank you. Thank you, Max, for definitely pointing that out. Deb? Because these are all great points. I'm so glad. Thank you for engaging in the conversation. Any other suggestions or comments about anticipate?
We have Francine raising her hand.
Yes.
Leslie, another thing that when I was a brand new Toastmaster, I heard DTM and TLI and PQD and
Yes. The
acronyms are one
Yes.
of my pet peeves. We need to be explaining things out rather than just throwing out acronyms and alphabet soup.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can get lost in the alphabet soup. I am guilty of it. I'm not going to lie. But yes, that is a very good point, that anticipate all of those acronyms, spell them out first. And once they learn the Toastmasters language, then we can start using them a little bit more frequently with a new Toastmaster. Absolutely. Thank you. That's a very, very good point. So yes, be mindful of the language. Okay?
Disney.
Yes, Disneyese. Yes, I am fluent in Disneyese after almost 30 years, so.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments about anticipate? Okay. All right. What about listing? Yes.
Oscar, I always thought it should be a listening club.
Okay.
Because in order to evaluate, in order to be a grammarian, in order to be an all-counter, in order to be these functionaries, you have to be able to listen.
That is a very good point.
And if you don't listen, you don't retain
Correct.
anything. And then you lose your speaker, and then your speaker gets frustrated and they give up.
Absolutely. That is a very good point. Yes. Some people, isn't there a part of an evaluation where you just listen to what the speaker has to say? But again, it doesn't have to just be about speeches. It's about having those individual conversations with each of your members, not just the new ones, but your regular, your loyal fans, your dedicated members. You want to have those conversations and listen, not just with your ears, but with your eyes and your body. So listening isn't just about the oral. It's about the language, the full package language.
The other thing that I'd love to point to, and that we do in Toastmasters, is that we powerfully listen for the positive, which often is the opposite in your work environment. They're listening for what you're doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole culture is based on that in Toastmasters. And that's why people find it as a safe environment. But also to point that out and help people to engage that way in powerfully listening for positive. Eventually, you draw out the positive in people, and you also, the negatives go away. And the way we always say opportunities are, not that there was anything missing necessarily, but the opportunity to expand. You could use your gestures, you could use your vocal variety, whatever, we expand it.
Right.
But to point that we saw the bravery of getting up there and the strength of their message, and it transforms people to powerfully listen, but to listen from that perspective. And to really tell people that when you bring them in, that's what we are to do.
Perfect. Yes. That is definitely what listening is all about. It's not just listen. You don't listen to respond. You listen to understand.
You also listen for questions.
Yes. Because sometimes in the conversation, they don't know that they're asking a question. So you have to listen for that. Great points. Thank you. What else? Anyone online? Deb?
We listen.
Okay.
Nope, nobody online having their hands
Okay.
raised.
Okay, perfect.
They're all listening.
They're all listening. Yes. Okay. All right. What about observe? What kind of things can you observe that can help with retention, that can help with onboarding?
Marjane?
Marjane?
We can observe more Jane.
I'm not specifically responding to that, but I did want to let you know that when Oscar speaks, it's very hard for us to understand. It's very muffled.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
That's good.
Do I need to
thank you.
You just need to speak.
Okay.
Just be a little bit louder. That's all.
turn around?
Try.
So,
All right, thank you. Thank you for the feedback, Marjane. All right. Who has any observations about observing?
Marjane just did.
Yes, she did. Yes, absolutely. That's a very good point. So observing gestures, body language, nonverbal cues. So you want to make sure that you try and keep your members engaged as possible and give them the reasons to come back. Okay. All right. Now, what about helping? Of course, we're all here to help. I mean, that's obvious. We're here for a reason. We're here to help ourselves. We're here to help each other. But let's think at a broader scale. What other ways can we help the club, the area, the division, the district, the community? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think we do help them as officers. I think we go to officer training and we do help to bring it back to the clubs. Because that's important to communicate with the clubs themselves and the individuals. And yes, marketing and networking, and I'm a little behind, but I'm gonna get it out in another week.
No worries, no worries. I saw a hand on Zoom. Who was that? Is that Marjane?
It's Marjane. Yeah, I was just going to add that to me, part of the thing that we sometimes forget in Toastmasters is that we did not come to Toastmasters, most of us, to become excellent Toastmasters. We came so that we could help somehow in our communities or our jobs, with nonprofit organizations, in whatever way, whatever it is that we wanted to contribute. Yes, it's great that we can help in Toastmasters, but think beyond that too.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, I've always said that Toastmasters are here for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So whatever that timeline is for you, make sure that you fulfill that. So whatever your reasoning is, whatever your goal is, that is part of helping in the bigger picture, in the bigger sense. And so one more hand on Zoom. Who's that?
It might be me.
Deb, can you verify?
This is
Vicky?
okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I do have my hand up. The first, backing up what Marjane said, I think it's really a great habit or policy to periodically, if not on a regular basis, ask club members, maybe at the end of the meeting, how have you applied your Toastmasters skills this week? Or how are you anticipating applying them this next week? How are you going to do that? Because I think we do forget what the real world application of these skills sometimes is. And that goes along with the other thing I was going to say, which is, Toastmasters, once we join, we somehow keep Toastmasters as our best kept secret. You need to be talking about it all the time, applying things that you do to Toastmasters to bring in people and get people to ask you questions, invite others to model for your members that you are in fact promoting Toastmasters and giving credit where credit's due.
Absolutely, Vicki. That is an excellent point. We don't invite enough. Invite. That should be our biggest ally. Word of mouth is huge. Did you know that? Little fun fact, Disney Cruise Line, when it first came on board, they did not do any visual advertising for the first 5 years of their existence. Everything was word of mouth. Think about that. The power of our words are so vital to our existence. If we don't talk about Toastmasters, we can't get new members. We can't retain the ones that we currently have. Communication is key.
I would not suggest this process in any way, but I gotta tell you, somebody asked me why I stay in Toastmasters.
Okay?
And I said, well, let me tell you, I was in the hospital. And so many Toastmasters came to visit me that at the front desk, they would just stand there and point to the elevator. And when I got, one day I was in ICU and they're like, some people have to leave because we can only allow 2 people in here. They got them a conference room. Oscar here, Edith and Donald had a Toastmasters meeting in their conference room while they were taking turns going to my room. And I said, where's Oscar? Well, he's doing table topics in the conference room.
That is fantastic.
I'm like, well, I guess it's a sense of family.
And that's a-
That, you know, keeps me here because when I had to go back for rehab, they're like, oh, that's you. You have so many people coming in here. You just told them knew the room number right at the top of our head. Because they came all the time and now that's what it is. I mean,
Mhm.
if you show people there's a sense of family there,
Yep.
they come back.
That's a very, very good point. Which leads me into the last A. Any other thoughts about helping? Yes, I see a hand up online.
I think that might be me again. I was just going to say that personal invitation is also all about connection, which is what was just spoken about. People usually have a very hard time going to some ambiguous thing, whether they see it on Meetup. It's like, I don't know anybody. It's a little scary to go into a place. But if somebody personally invites them or they have somebody they're going to meet, that's a connection. And that connection is what gets them there. It also is what keeps them there, is maintaining those connections.
Exactly. Absolutely. That is definitely, it is the sense of family. It is the sense of community that we build as Toastmasters, as a club, as an area, as a division, as a district. I mean, how many people did we anticipate to show up at conference this year? It was a good problem to have. We were only expecting so many and we got 30, 40, 50 more. TLI 2 weeks ago. If you weren't there, we ran out of food. But that was, in my positive thinking, that was a good problem to have because we weren't anticipating the numbers. Yes, we probably could have planned better for it. However, the positive is that people want the community. And that's what we need to encourage. Which leads me into the A, appreciate. Never forget to appreciate the people in your lives, the club that you have. This district, I am so thankful for because they've given me this opportunity to be able to speak to you today. Never forget how to appreciate your members. What kind of ways can we appreciate our members? Any thoughts?
A little trinket.
Little trinkets, absolutely. What else?
Well, I think when you first bring a new member in, it's fun if we use, can everybody hear, should I stand up?
Yeah.
Okay. It's fun if you use the materials that Toastmaster give you, the little Toastmaster pin. That's kind of a little treasure that people hold on to.
Yeah.
Then all these certificates that you can actually, bring a printer and print out on the spot that are significant.
Yep.
Often our new members will win our table topics or that sort of thing, but also with follow-up notes. I know the time when, whatever. When Sandy did these little cards she brought
Yep.
in, and she wrote of everyone a card of why she appreciated. It's only a sentence or two, but it was very specific.
Yep.
And then encourage other people to do that.
Right.
I mean, it goes on and on as far as appreciation.
Absolutely. Paying it forward is a huge way to appreciate. Yes, online?
just recognize the accomplishment, whether someone has completed a level or a speech or an icebreaker, or someone has brought in a guest. We want to thank this member for bringing in a guest. Whatever they have done, if you just recognize it at the meeting in front of everybody else, a lot of times that's a great promotion and gives other people a little bit of inspiration and motivation to do the same thing.
Absolutely, 100%. Verbal and also knowing how your members like to be appreciated. Some people like a quiet appreciation, a no. Some people want a big party, like me. You know, so knowing your members, knowing your guests, knowing your potential members, understanding how they tick will help with that appreciation.
And an applause.
Yes, applause, yes. Applause, applause, applause. We always, that's something that we all need to come back to. Zoom has kind of made us a little lackadaisical in the sense that we really don't applause on Zoom, but
Yeah,
when
we
we're
used to
in
do it
person.
every time somebody stepped up
Exactly,
to
anytime somebody stepped up to the podium, that's a small token of appreciation
lectern, I should
that
say.
we take for granted. So just little things like that. It's always the little things that will help you appreciate. All right, I'm running out of time, so let me go ahead and move on here. Thank you for your participation. That was an amazing conversation. So let's go ahead and recap what we went over today. So conscious competence. You don't know what you don't know. And as you progress in your Toastmasters journey, it's from you don't know what you don't know all the way to DTM. That's what the conscious competence model is all about. Formulate a plan, occupy the space, retain the audience, and modify if needed. And then you've got aloha. Anticipate, listen, observe, help, and appreciate. And I appreciate all of you being here today to support me. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been an absolute pleasure. On the screen, I have left my contact information in the QR code, and I also have left links of the resources that I have referenced today. You have been an absolute pleasure. And again, thank you for being here.